The wind howled across the frozen fields like something alive, clawing at the old wooden farmhouse as snow buried the world outside. Inside, 25-year-old Emma Carter stood alone, gripping her father's worn shotgun, heart pounding at a sudden knock on the door. No one came this far in a storm like this. No one good, anyway. The knock came again, weak, desperate. When she finally opened the door, she didn't see trouble. She saw a wounded Navy SEAL and a massive German Shepherd bleeding in his arms. And in that moment, everything in her life was about to change. Before we begin, share the city you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if this kind of story speaks to you, don't forget to subscribe and be part of the journey. Now, let's get into it. Midnight settled heavily over the outskirts of Bozeman, Montana, where the wind did not simply blow, it howled, dragging snow across the land like a restless spirit that refused to sleep. The Carter farmhouse stood alone against it, old timber creaking under the weight of winter, its porch buried halfway in drifting white. Inside, Emma Carter stood by the stove, stirring slowly, as if the small pot of soup could hold winter back. At 25, her auburn hair fell in soft, restless waves, catching the lantern light like dying embers, a few strands clinging to her cheeks, as though even they felt the cold. Her eyes did not wander, they watched, quiet and distant, like someone who had learned that trouble rarely knocks loud. It waits, and then arrives. The knock came sharp. Emma froze. The wooden spoon slipped from her fingers, tapping softly against the floor. No one came up this road during a storm like this. No one who meant well. Her heart began to pound, not fast, but heavy, like each beat carried memory with it. She reached above the mantel without looking and pulled down her father's shotgun, the familiar weight settling into her hands like an old promise. The second knock was weaker. Not demanding, not angry, desperate. Emma stepped toward the door, each movement careful, the floorboards whispering beneath her boots. She cracked the door just enough for the storm to force its way in, snow swirling across the threshold, and then she saw him. A man stood there, shoulders broad but sagging under exhaustion. His winter camouflage jacket burned through in places, darkened by blood along one side. His face, framed by short dark hair and a rough shadow of beard, held the kind of stillness that came from pushing too far for too long. Around 35, maybe older by what he had carried, his eyes met hers steady, not pleading, but honest in a way that made it harder to refuse. "I'm not here to cause trouble," he said, voice low, edged with cold. "Just need a place to get him warm." Only then did Emma notice what he held. A German Shepherd, large, heavy, its black and tan coat soaked through with snow and blood. The dog's body sagged in his arms, one hind leg hanging wrong, breath shallow and uneven. Even injured, the animal looked formidable, its size alone enough to make her tighten her grip on the shotgun. The man shifted slightly, as if the weight didn't matter anymore. Truck blew a tire outside Yellowstone, went off the road, caught fire, no signal. I walked. Emma swallowed. The wind pushed harder, biting through the open door, carrying the smell of smoke and cold iron. Behind her, the house felt small, too small for strangers, too fragile for risk. Food was running low. The bank's final notice sat folded on her table. And somewhere in the back of her mind, the name Victor Hale lingered like a threat that never quite left. She hesitated. A man, a soldier, a dog that could tear through bone, or a memory. Her father's voice, quiet but firm, echoing through years of winter nights. A soldier doesn't bring war to your doorstep, Emma. He carries enough of it already. The man's grip tightened slightly around the dog, not out of impatience, but as if he feared the animal might not last much longer. Emma lowered the shotgun just an inch. "You come in," she said, her voice steady despite the storm inside her chest. "But you follow my rules." He nodded once. No argument. No going into my room. No touching anything that's not yours. Door stays locked at night. Another nod. She stepped aside. The wind rushed in as they crossed the threshold, bringing the storm with them. He moved carefully, lowering the dog near the fire, his movements controlled despite the injury in his shoulder. Up close, Emma could see the strain in the way he held himself. the quiet discipline keeping him upright when his body wanted to collapse. "I'm Daniel," he said after a moment, adjusting the blanket she handed him. "Daniel Brooks." "Emma," she replied, already moving toward the stove, her hands finding tasks before her thoughts could catch up. The dog stirred faintly. Emma glanced down and, for the first time, truly saw it. The animal was enormous, easily close to 90 pounds, its head broad, jaw heavy enough to crush through anything soft enough to break. Even lying still, it carried the shape of something built for force, for precision, for violence when necessary. Her breath caught. The dog's eyes opened amber, sharp despite the pain. For a second, Emma didn't move, didn't breathe. The creature shifted, not toward her throat, not toward her hands. Slowly, with a deliberate effort, it dragged itself forward across the wooden floor. Each movement cost it something. Each inch was earned. Then it stopped, right at her feet, and lowered its massive head to the floor beside her boot. No growl, no warning, just the quiet, trembling weight of something that no longer had the strength to fight. Emma stared down at it, the shotgun forgotten at her side. It didn't look like a threat anymore. It looked like something asking to be allowed to stay alive. Was Emma's decision a mistake, or the beginning of something she didn't yet understand? A wounded soldier, a powerful dog she could barely trust, and a house already hanging on the edge of collapse? How much more could she really risk? Morning came without color, only a pale gray light pressing through the frost on the windows. The storm had loosened its grip, but the cold remained, patient and unmoved. Inside the farmhouse, something had shifted, not loudly, not enough to notice at first. But the silence no longer felt empty. Emma moved through the small space with quiet purpose. Water simmered on the stove. Cloth was cut and folded. She measured what little food she had left, stretching each portion as if time itself depended on it. Across the room, Daniel sat near the fire, doing exactly as she told him, nothing more, nothing less. "Hold still," she said, kneeling beside him. He didn't argue. Her hands worked carefully, cleaning and wrapping the wound again. She didn't rush. Pain didn't make her hesitate. It only made her more precise. "You've done this before," Daniel said. Emma kept her eyes on the bandage. "I had to." She tied the cloth, then added after a moment, "My father didn't believe in doctors unless something was already broken beyond fixing." Daniel studied her quietly. "He died 2 winters ago," she said, still not looking up. "Storm came in fast. Fence line went down. He went out to fix it before the horses got loose." A pause. "I found him in the snow the next morning." The words settled into the room like something that had been said many times before, but never fully carried. Emma stood and moved away, wiping her hands. After that, everything started slipping. She gestured lightly toward the window. The farm was already struggling. Bad seasons, broken equipment, too much depending on too little. My dad held it together somehow. Her voice tightened just slightly. "I couldn't." Daniel didn't interrupt. "The bank gave me time," she continued. "Not enough. Just enough to pretend it might work." She let out a slow breath. "Now I've got a final notice sitting on that table." Daniel followed her gaze. "This isn't just the bank," he said after a moment. "Someone's been pushing you." Emma hesitated, then nodded once. "Victor Hale." The name carried weight. "He's been buying land around here. Always shows up when people are out of options. Talks like he's helping." Her jaw set. "But he's just waiting for things to fall apart so he can take them cheap." "And you said no." "Every time." Daniel leaned back slightly. "Then he'll wait." Emma gave a small, humorless smile. "That's the problem. He doesn't have to rush." Across the room, Titan shifted. Emma noticed immediately. The dog had been still most of the morning, conserving energy, but now it pushed itself upright with effort. Its movement drew her attention faster than anything else in the room. There was something unsettling about it, not just the size, but the control. Even injured, it didn't move like a wounded animal. It moved like something choosing each step. It came closer. Emma didn't step back, but her body tightened without permission. Titan stopped within reach. For a second, nothing happened. Then it lowered itself and rested its head against her knee. The weight was solid, real. Emma froze, her hand hovering in the air before slowly, carefully, she let it rest against the side of the dog's neck. The fur was thick, still carrying the cold from outside. Titan didn't react, didn't shift, just stayed there. Daniel watched, something thoughtful crossing his expression. "He's a military working dog," he said, "not trained to be friendly." Emma swallowed. "Then why is he doing that?" Daniel didn't answer right away. His gaze moved briefly around the room, then back to her. "He picks up on things most people don't." "Like what?" A small pause. "Fear," he said, "or something close to it." Emma's hand stilled. "I'm not afraid of him," she said quietly. Daniel didn't argue. "Didn't say you were?" The distinction lingered. Later, Emma set a small dish of food on the floor. Titan ate slowly, carefully, then moved away from the fire. Not far, just enough to keep a clear view of both the door and the window. "Watching," Daniel noticed. "He'll do that," he said. "Even when he's hurt." "Why?" "Because stopping isn't something he was trained to do." Emma nodded slightly, though she wasn't sure if she understood or if she just wanted to. A few days later, the storm finally passed, leaving the land quiet and exposed. Daniel was back on his feet, not fully recovered but steady enough. Titan moved better too, no longer dragging himself, his presence returning to something controlled and watchful. That morning, Daniel stood by the window, studying the broken lines of the farm. "I should go," he said at first, then paused. "But I'd like to stay a few more days, help you fix what I can." Emma hesitated, then nodded. The days that followed changed the place in small, honest ways. Daniel repaired the barn latch, reinforced the porch, and cleared paths through the snow. Nothing dramatic, just steady work that made the farm feel like it could stand again. Titan patrolled the edges, always alert, staying close whenever Emma stepped outside, placing himself quietly between her and the open land. Inside, the house shifted too. There were footsteps in the morning, another voice at the table, a presence that didn't leave when the wind rose. And without realizing when it happened, Emma stopped feeling alone. For a few days, it almost felt like things were settling, until the kind of people Emma had been trying to avoid finally decided to come to her door. Emma didn't notice the change right away. It was Titan who did. The dog had been resting near the door when something in him shifted. His head lifted, then the rest of him followed, tightening with quiet intent. A low sound rose from his chest, not a bark, something deeper, controlled, like pressure building beneath the surface. Emma turned sharply. "What is it?" she asked, though her hand had already moved toward the shotgun leaning against the wall. Daniel didn't answer immediately. He was already watching Titan. "He's working," he said. Only then did she hear it, the faint grind of tires outside, slow and deliberate, moving with purpose. The engine cut. Doors opened. Emma didn't wait. She picked up the shotgun and moved to the door, opening it before anyone could knock. Victor Hale stood there, calm as ever, with two men behind him, their boots pressed into the snow like they belonged there. "Well," Hale said, glancing past her into the house, "looks like you're not alone anymore." Emma didn't lower the gun. "You need to leave." Hale ignored that, his attention drifting to Daniel. "Didn't take you long to find help," he said, though I doubt he understands what he's stepping into. Daniel didn't respond. He simply stood there, still, watching. That stillness unsettled Hale more than a threat would have. "You're making this harder than it needs to be," Hale continued, turning back to Emma. "Sell the place, walk away with something, or lose everything when the bank takes it." Emma's voice didn't rise. "I'm not selling to you." Hale exhaled slowly, like a man losing patience with something beneath him. "You don't have the luxury of pride." Before Emma could answer, Titan moved. There was no warning, no growl, no hesitation. One moment he was beside the door, the next he launched forward, a solid mass of muscle cutting through the space with terrifying precision. His body collided just short of Hale, jaws snapping shut with a sharp crack in the air, close enough that the sound alone made one of the men stumble backward. Snow kicked up beneath his paws as he planted himself between the porch and the doorway, weight forward, stance locked. The two men behind Hale reacted instantly, stepping back, hands half raised without realizing it. Titan didn't bark, didn't lunge again. He held, close enough that one wrong move would end it. "Jesus," one of Hale's men snapped, stumbling back, trying to recover his composure like nothing had just happened. "Get that animal under control. It almost took my leg off." Hale didn't step back immediately, but the confidence in his posture shifted, tightening just slightly. Daniel's voice came from behind Emma, low and controlled. "He's not trying to bite you." Hale glanced toward him. Daniel met his eyes, calm, unreadable. "If he was," Daniel added, "you wouldn't be standing there." Silence followed, the kind that forces people to make decisions they weren't prepared for. One of the men shifted again, glancing at Hale as if waiting for instruction. Hale let out a slow breath, then took a step back, not retreating, but adjusting. "You've got yourself a dangerous animal," he said, though the edge in his voice had changed. Daniel didn't move. "He's doing his job." Hale studied him for a moment longer, then looked back at Emma. "This doesn't change anything," he said. "You're still out of time." Emma held his gaze. "Then you'd better come back with more than threats." That landed harder than she expected. Hale's jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. He stepped back fully this time, nodding once to his men. "We'll be back," he said. "And next time, this won't be a conversation." He turned, the others following quickly, boots crunching hard against the snow as they moved away. The engine started again, then faded. Titan didn't move until the sound was gone completely. Only then did he step back, returning inside without looking at Emma, as if nothing had happened. Emma closed the door slowly, her grip on the shotgun loosening. Her hands weren't shaking. That surprised her more than anything. Daniel stepped forward, glancing at Titan before looking at her. "You held your ground." Emma let out a breath. "Didn't feel like it." "That doesn't matter." The words stayed with her. Later, when the house had settled again, Emma moved to the table and pulled out something she hadn't touched in a long time. A photograph, worn thin at the edges. She placed it in front of Daniel. "My dad." Daniel looked down and went still. Emma noticed immediately. "What is it?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached into his pocket, pulling out his wallet. From inside, he slid out another photograph, older, creased, carried for years. He placed it beside hers. Emma leaned forward. "Same man." Her breath caught. "That's my dad." Daniel nodded slowly. 15 years ago, winter training. I went through the ice." His voice lowered. "He pulled me out." Emma stared at the photos, her fingers tightening around the table's edge. "He never told me that." Daniel looked at her. "Some men don't." Silence settled between them, heavier now, filled with something neither of them had expected. 15 years ago, Daniel said quietly, "he saved my life." Emma met his eyes. "And now," he added, "you saved mine." The words didn't echo. They stayed. Emma looked down at the photographs again, then back at him, something inside her shifting into place. "I'm not walking away from that," Daniel said. "Not from you." Outside, the night remained still, but inside, something had begun quiet, certain, and impossible to ignore. Morning came quietly, as if the land itself had decided not to interfere with what needed to happen next. Emma woke to an unfamiliar stillness, not the kind that came from isolation, but the kind that followed after something had been decided, even if no one had spoken it aloud yet. Daniel was already outside. She saw him through the window, standing near the edge of the property with a phone pressed to his ear, his posture steady despite the cold. He spoke briefly, not wasting words, then ended the call and remained there a moment longer, looking out over the land as if measuring something only he could see. Emma didn't step outside. Something told her this wasn't a moment meant to be interrupted. By midday, everything had changed. Emma didn't understand it at first. It started with a call from the bank, short, formal, almost indifferent. The kind of tone people use when something is no longer their problem. Her account had been settled, the debt gone. She stood there holding the phone long after the line went silent, waiting for the mistake to reveal itself. It didn't. When she turned, Daniel was already inside. "You did this," she said. It wasn't a question. Daniel didn't deny it. It needed to be done. Emma took a step toward him, something sharp rising in her chest. "With what? You don't just fix something like that." A brief pause. Then, simply, "I had something to sell." The words landed harder than anything Hale had said the night before. Emma shook her head, struggling to understand. You barely know me. Daniel held her gaze. I knew your father. That stopped her. He saved my life, Daniel continued. This isn't charity. Emma looked away, her breath uneven now. You sold your home. It wasn't a guess. Daniel didn't answer, but he didn't need to. Something inside her shifted, not relief, not yet. Something heavier, the realization that someone had given up something real for her. You shouldn't have done that, she said quietly. Daniel's voice didn't rise. Maybe not. A pause. But I did. He left that afternoon. No announcement, no drawn-out goodbye, just a quiet decision made real. Emma stood on the porch as he walked toward the road, Titan moving beside him. She didn't call out, she didn't ask him to stay. Not because she didn't want to, because she didn't know how to ask for something like that. The town moved faster than she expected. By the next day, the whispers had already started. Emma heard them in passing, in lowered voices that didn't quite lower enough. Hale had done what he always did, turned truth into something else, something easier to spread. A stranger in her home, a debt suddenly gone, the kind of story people preferred over facts. For a moment, the old instinct returned, to stay quiet, to endure it. But something had changed. Emma stepped into the center of it. He didn't take anything from me, she said, her voice steady despite the eyes on her. He gave everything. That quieted more than she expected. But not all of it. Hale stood nearby, watching, waiting for the moment to twist things back in his favor. You expect people to believe that? He said. That a man gives up that much for nothing? Emma met his gaze. Not for nothing. Before Hale could respond, another voice entered the space. I didn't. Daniel. He stepped forward, calm, composed, as if he had never left. The shift in the crowd was immediate. I paid the debt, he said, not loudly, but clearly enough that no one could pretend not to hear. Because her father saved my life 15 years ago. The words spread through the silence like something undeniable. Emma felt it before she could process it. Then Daniel added, without hesitation, I sold what I had. That's not a favor. That's a debt. Emma looked at him, the weight of it finally settling fully. Not just what he had done, what it had cost him, and what it meant that he had come back anyway. Hale didn't speak again. For the first time, there was nothing left for him to use. He turned and walked away. Spring came slowly. Not all at once, but in signs: snow thinning, ground softening, light lasting longer each day. The farm changed with it, repairs held, work continued. And this time, Emma didn't carry it alone. Daniel stayed, not as a visitor, as someone who had chosen to remain. Together, they rebuilt what had been falling apart. Not just the land, but something less visible, something steadier. Word spread, but this time it carried differently. Others came, men who had served, who had nowhere to go, who understood silence in ways most didn't. The farm became more than it had been. Titan moved through it all without hesitation, no longer guarding against something, but holding the space as if it belonged to him. One afternoon, Emma led Daniel to the far edge of the property. A simple marker stood there, her father's resting place. Daniel stopped in front of it, removing his gloves slowly. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he stepped closer. I should have come sooner, he said quietly. No audience, no witnesses, just truth. He pulled me out of that water when I didn't have anything left, Daniel continued. I didn't get the chance to say thank you. Emma stood beside him, silent. Daniel reached into his pocket and took out something small. A ring, shaped from metal worn smooth by time, simple but deliberate. He turned toward her. I can't give you back what you lost, he said, but I can promise you won't carry it alone anymore. He knelt, not as a gesture, but as a decision made visible. Sir, he added softly, glancing once toward the marker, you have my word. Then back to Emma. Will you let me keep it? Emma didn't answer right away. She stepped closer and nodded. The wind moved lightly across the field, no longer carrying cold. And for the first time in years, the house behind them was no longer a place that held on. It was a place that had been chosen. Some moments don't look like miracles when they arrive. They come quietly, as a knock on the door, a stranger in need, or a simple choice that turns into something much bigger. Emma thought she was just offering shelter. Daniel thought he was just surviving a storm, but something greater was already in motion. Some call it coincidence, others call it grace. A life saved years ago, returned at the exact moment it was needed. A home almost lost, restored not just with money, but with care, purpose, and love. And a woman who had learned to stand alone, reminded she didn't have to anymore. Maybe that's how God works, not always with signs, but through people who show up when it matters most. If this story stayed with you, maybe it's meant to. Perhaps there's someone in your life who needs a call, a kind word, or simply to be remembered. If it touched your heart, feel free to share where you're watching from or what part meant the most to you. And if stories like this bring you comfort, you're always welcome to stay with us. May God watch over you, bring you peace, and guide the right people into your life, right when you need them most.